Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Mario Kiriakou, a co-founder at Ratio, and I'll be your host for today. Today's topic is turning app data into growth and revenue, and we'll be exploring quite a lot of different strategies around how to drive adoption and engagement of your mobile apps. Some of the things we're going to cover today, there's a couple of broad areas we're going to cover. We're going to explore um, increasing app download strategies around increasing the flow of potential users and customers of your app. So we're going to look at moving beyond that first download into driving engagement. We're going to look at some of the perennial challenges around retention and repeat of use. We're going to look at some of the strategies around how you can leverage data to optimize and build data-driven testing strategies into your ongoing optimization efforts. And we're going to cover off a few live examples from some well-known and perhaps less well-known brands around best practices and hopefully a bunch of ideas that you can take back to your own business. So I'm going to hand over to my two super smart colleagues who are going to run us through today's presentation to introduce themselves and to carry on today's topic.
Thank you, Mario. So, hi everyone, I'm Maddie. I'm an optimization analyst here at Ratio. I have over 3 years experience working in the industry, working across a very vast range of industries from e-com to travel to e-gaming. And I have recently specialized in app optimization. I think it's really important that we start shifting our focus from web optimization to app. I think app offers a lot richer opportunity for customer analysis, and it requires us to have a very detailed approach to our optimization. So yeah, that's a bit about me.
And I'm Douglas. I'm the Insights Director here at Ratio. I have 15 years of experience now helping brands to make more money, essentially, with more effective use of their digital data. And I am just fascinated by the treasure trove of data and insight that are contained within apps. But obviously, the right strategies are required to maximize the impact, commercial impact, I should say, from that data. And that's what we're here today to discuss.
So we thought we'd kick off with quite a gut-wrenching statistic. 71% of app users churn completely within 90 days, meaning in 90 days' time, 71% of our users may never come back to our app. And that is such an important figure that we need to try and improve as a business. And here's a little story of how you may find yourself doing that. Analytics are so important for growth. Every interaction a customer has within your app is data waiting to be turned into insights. It's crucial to measure analytics for apps because it tells us what the performance like, what users are responding to, or what are they not responding to, where are the bugs within our app that we need to fix. And everything that the user does means it's an opportunity for us to learn and grow within our app. However, analytics is not as simple as it may just sound. We know that analytics causes growth. We can do this by refining user experience. So we can use analytics to align our product vision and with user needs and our growth goals. So really taking what we can see within the data and shaping our strategies moving forward to ensure that we are moving forward in the direction that the user sees best fit. We can increase user retention and engagement via our analytics. We can measure how our long-term user base are responding to the app. What features are they using? What are they not using? How can we get more users to adopt these kind of behavioral habits in order to increase our range of long-term user customer base. And then finally, and a figure that we all love to measure is drive revenue through data-driven decisions. So all of this combined, happy users are more likely to come back, and users that are coming back frequently are more likely to spend money with us, meaning growth in our revenue. How do we do this though? Is a big question you're probably all asking. And I think a starting point that is a great point to start from is answering your business questions. So I'm sure you're faced with stakeholder questions all the time around how is this performing? What is this performing? And just aligning those business questions with your business goals to form a starting point. You then need to identify what types of data you have. So do you have a full wide range of qualitative data? Are you able to combine your qualitative data with your quantitative data in order to paint a full picture of your customer journey? I think sometimes businesses forget that customer data and financial data aren't always the two important drivers, and businesses should also be considering operational data. And I'll go into a little bit more on that on the next slide. So in terms of your customer data, you should be measuring customer behavior, their preferences, demographics, in order to understand who your customer is, what are they trying to achieve on your app, and what behaviors can you match up between user groups in order to serve content that is relevant to your specific user. Then, as mentioned previously, you can take a look at your operational data. I think this is typically kind of forgotten in our day-to-day jobs, but within your app, every product or every feature that you have in your app costs money to run. It costs money to build, it costs money to maintain, and it costs money to improve it. And we quite often live in a world where we are very feature driven. We need this feature, we need this feature because it's going to drive X, Y, Z. But sometimes it's important to take a step back and think, well, we implemented this feature and no one's using it. What is that cost on our business to keep maintenance of this feature? I find when we're looking at optimization on apps, it's very, how can we improve this user experience? But it's never thinking the other way and thinking, well, we have this feature here that no one's using. What happens if we just removed it? How much money would that save for us, or what kind of time would that save for our business? And then the last type of data that you can be researching within your company is obviously probably one of the most popular ones, financial data, looking at your sales, revenues, costs, and aligning that with how you can drive more sales, how can you drive more revenue from your existing customer base. That is all well and good, but data doesn't mean you have the insights yet. Data is just a dashboard that you will see. And it's really trying to build those techniques on how do you turn your customer data into insights about your customers. Now, a couple of analysis techniques that you can do to turn your data into insights is one, looking at descriptive analysis, where you're just summarizing the set of data. So maybe you're looking at your onboarding funnel conversion rate. You can then look at predictive analysis. So that's looking at more historical data. So potentially you serviced a feature update within your onboarding platform 6 months ago, and you want to see how your new feature update has improved your conversion rates. So you would take a look at your historical data and you would look at your data at the moment. And then you can use prescriptive analysis to predict the future. Combining descriptive and predictive analysis sets you up for potentially you work in a travel agency and you typically find that your seasonality means there's a high influx in sales or users come into your app to register and purchase a holiday in January to March time. So you can use the descriptive and predictive analysis in order to predict what is going to happen on your app and where you need to focus on before you hit your peak seasonality. So as mentioned, you can look for themes and trends in your data. You then want to create problem statements for each theme. So you have a targeted view of what the problems are and raise some questions around how are we going to solve this. You then need to highlight what you do know and separate that into a what you do know pile and what you think you should do next as a separate pile. You can see here a list of key metrics for apps that will drive these sorts of insights, for valuable insights for your business. I won't go into all of them as I'm sure you're very aware of these metrics already, but key metrics in terms of user engagement, you want to look at your App Store download rates. Essentially, everyone that lands on your app needs to have downloaded it before. So that's a really key metric to ensure we have a view on. Potentially your onboarding funnel isn't the problem. You've got a problem within your App Store download App Store profile page. Alternatively, you can look at daily active users, weekly active users, and monthly active users to measure whether you have a problem with converting daily active users to weekly, or whether you have a problem with retaining users on the monthly basis. In terms of customer retention and loyalty metrics, churn rate's a massive one for apps, looking at where users are dropping off, why they're dropping off, looking at repeat purchase behavior. Are there quick routes that users prefer to take in order to make their second purchase or third purchase over their first? Particularly looking at Net Promoter Score. Now, for apps, trust is a massive thing, and ensuring that users are responding well to your app, having positive experiences and sharing it, not just with you, with other users, is really key for apps. Yeah, that's a long list of key metrics and is not even the half of them. So let's maybe get a little bit more practical now and look at how we would approach a question, a business question like this. So, how successful is your app at onboarding new customers? We would recommend looking at your App Store data. So as a business, you need to understand what users are searching for within the App Store so you can align the App Store display page, and then you can optimize when users land on the app, what they see when they land. So ensuring that that journey is consistent throughout. You can also look at what ads the user's previously seen. So if they are seeing content around particular keywords, You then want to feature that in your App Store listing page, and you want to make sure that's a key feature when the user first opens the app. All this information impacts the user's likelihood for becoming an onboarded customer. You can then take a look at what users are doing before sign up is completed. So you can use platforms such as Full Story that has session recordings to highlight where the drop-offs are in your funnel of onboarding and walk through some session recordings to see whether users are pausing for quite long on a certain section, whether they're finding friction in your funnel, or there's a certain line on your onboarding journey that a user clicks on and then leaves your app. And then those are some key points to determine where users are getting stuck. You can then use all this data to identify opportunities for improvement. For example, say you had a low App Store download rate. This means you need to focus on using techniques to improve this App Store download rate, whether that's improving your app display page, optimizing key search terms, or ensuring that the information from the onboarding portal aligns with what you're displaying in that App Store promotion page. You might have also identified that your highest onboard and drop-off rate is in step 3 of registration. So you need to identify opportunities to make this step simpler, whether you think users have anxiety that's preventing them from proceeding to the next step, or they're lacking certain information to give them that confidence in proceeding. A recent study shows that 67% of new app downloads are accounted by App Store searches. Given the vast number of apps that are on the App Store, it is so important that you are optimizing your key search term criteria within your display page to ensure that you are ranking high enough to get your app seen by more people. For boutique apps, we would recommend prioritizing high volume search terms with low competition. Now, the big apps in the market can pay to have these top positions. They can afford the most expensive search terms. For example, if we're thinking about a travel brand, so booking.com, they can afford to have like book hotels. They can dominate those highly searched key terms. What you want to do as a boutique app is maybe target your search terms for more specialist criteria. For example, you can target based on location around specific like destinations or like hotel rooms, whether you provide like B&Bs over hotels. Try target more specialized search terms in order to stand out in these crowded markets. App reviews are something that everyone reads before downloading the app. Well, maybe not everyone. 77% of users read at least one review before downloading a free app. And this figure is even higher for paid apps. So you need to ensure that your reviews in the App Store are as positive as possible. Now, as I'm sure we're all aware, users are very inclined to share negative reviews. It's the first thing you do once you've had a bad experience, you're feeling a bit jaded. you're going to go and leave a review, and it's not going to shine the way we would want the review to shine about your brand. So you can test send time optimizations for reviews on your app. You need to make sure you're targeting your existing customer base that have used the app, are confident, and are enjoying your app experience. This is how you'll grow your positive reviews, and this will have a knock-on effect in future downloads. Seasonality is a big one for your app store also. Say, for example, you have a clothing brand and it is, well, currently February. People might be starting to consider their spring-summer wardrobe. You will want to be displaying clothes that reflect that seasonality within your images on your app store display page. For example, you might want more dresses to be displayed if it's a female clothing brand over, your winter jumpers. This not only helps users align with their expectations of what they're going to see in the app, it improves your ranking on the App Store because you have to release a new feature for this, which helps you move up in the rankings. Localization is a tricky factor to consider. It's great that you are willing to offer localization for your App Store listing. However, it comes with some considerations. For example, you're displaying your app display page in Spanish. The user from Spain who's Spanish downloads the app. They open the app, but the only language that they can use is in English. Now, this doesn't align with their expectation because you've optimized and personalized your app landing page to suit the user needs better, but your app doesn't meet that criteria. So that is something to be aware of when you're offering localization, as it can negatively impact user impressions. Again, going back to our problem statement, we saw that step 3 in the onboarding process was the highest dropout rate. A complicated onboarding process drives user abandonment. Around 74% of potential customers may switch to a competitor if the onboarding process is too complicated. So it's really important to make sure your sign-up process is easy to use. You are specifying why the information is required from the user, and making sure you're asking the right information at the right stage. Now, users will be hesitant, for example, if you ask for their line of address before you ask for their email, because they think, you don't know anything about me right now. Why do you need to know where I live? So getting those steps right are really important within your onboarding funnel. How you can improve these steps is running A/B tests to determine whether your hypotheses are correct. You may have a hypothesis around you're not being clear around why my phone number is required, and you can run a simple A/B test where you add an additional line of copy to explain why the user's phone number is required. This will then, by A/B testing this, you will be able to determine the direct impact of this change and ensure that your hypotheses are correct and you can keep moving forward with these hypotheses. Another business question you may be asking is, what actions do high retention users take that others don't? Now, the first step in order to answer this question would be you need to define what a high retention user is versus a low. And this can be done many ways, and it really depends on your business and your KPIs. You need to define your retention key milestones. So whether you want to look over a 30-day period or a 7-day period is fine for you. You then need to group your users in cohorts based on retention duration, making sure that you have your users grouped correctly in order to look at what a high retention user does versus a low. You then can identify key behavioral differences. So the way I prefer to do this is asking questions and then going into the data and trying to find the answers. So I would typically ask myself, what features do a high retention user interact with frequently? Do they use the advanced features on our app? How often do they come back to the app? When are they opening the app? Do they respond better to personalized recommendations? And where are they getting their recommendations from? All these questions can be answered. You just need to have an appropriate way of finding this data, which I'll pass on to Doug to show one of the techniques that we use to do this.
Thanks, Maddie. So it's a little bit technical, but I won't get too into the weeds. But there is a statistical technique called cluster analysis. And this technique called cluster analysis can help us to find those patterns that Maddie's talking about, i.e., certain features that are being interacted with in different sequences and how that makes a group of users more or less likely to do what we want, i.e., to have better retention or to buy more through the app or more likely to subscribe, etc. And what I've done is to look at, on the next slide, please, a couple of, or three different use cases for cluster analysis with a real world application to show what you can learn using this statistical technique. So this is an app called Komoot, which allows you to get popular routes for different sorts of outdoor activities, like mountain biking trails or running trails and so on. And although the app is real, the data is fictional, but it will give you a good indication of what we can learn by using cluster analysis. So firstly, this first cluster could be that users who come from a Google search ad that specifies hike, bike, and run in the title, i.e. that Komoot offers multiple activities, are more likely to start a free trial if they select two or more of those sports within the onboarding flow. And so the hypothesis there could be that if we do more to highlight multi-sport possibilities in the ad copy across different channels, like we have on this one on Google, that will drive increased adoption, so we can transfer the learnings there. Cluster B could be that users who come from Apple ads and download a free map have a lower churn rate than those who come from Apple ads and don't download a free map. And you'd note that in the example ad creative there within the Apple Ad Store, there is no mention of a free map. And I can tell you that the free map feature is quite recessive within the app. So the hypothesis we could have around this cluster and how we can improve their performance is that by highlighting the initial free map in the ad creative and making it more prominent within the app itself, we get more users to download it and reduce their churn rate. And finally, there's a few features in the app that could be used kind of in parallel, but aren't necessarily used in parallel. So there's the feature in the left-hand screenshot where you select your route, and the feature in the right-hand screenshot where you can record a start of an activity and it will start measuring your speed and the distance you cover and stuff like that. And there could be a cluster that shows us that not everyone who picks the route starts the recording, but those who do are more likely to remain active after 1 week rather. So the hypothesis here from this cluster could be that if we create a start recording now prompt after users select a route, they'll be more likely to start recording and then more likely to remain active. This sort of cluster analysis, although I've shown kind of the relationship between two different data points, can also help us understand more comprehensively what are the key kind of journeys or like based on the clusters that users are going through. And one technique we use, a ratio that's very helpful, is to use these to create a visualized journey map for, say, let's say high or low retention users. And that's a great tool from an ideation perspective to have a shared understanding of what's working and what's not, to look for optimization and personalization opportunities. Now, it is true that this is not a trivial thing to do, this cluster analysis, even setting aside the statistics. And the reason is that it's not just out of the box that you have a end-to-end understanding of each customer's journey, i.e. what ad they saw through to what they did or didn't do in the app. And so here are some steps that you need to take in order to employ this sort of practice yourself. So you need to use a mobile measurement platform, for example, AppsFlyer. These platforms help you capture the journey from ad click to in-app events. So you set up a campaign rather than sending people directly to your App Store page, you send them via AppsFlyer, and then AppsFlyer is smart enough to connect the dots on which ad clicks resulted in which actions. It is true that you will have more and less success doing this across different platforms. Android is quite straightforward at this granular user level tracking, whereas anyone with an iPhone would know that on iOS, Apple are now pushing this ad tracking transparency banner, and anyone who opts out of tracking using that banner, which most people do, you don't get user level data for those people anymore. But for those that you do still get the user level data for from iOS or for most Android users, you can get that data from the mobile measurement platform into a data warehouse and then do cluster or path analysis there, which will reveal some hidden patterns, high value segments, and optimization opportunities.
So now we've given you a lot of information about how we would approach these business questions. We can now look at real world applications of where we can see businesses optimizing their apps. This is quite a popular case study within the industry, looking at Duolingo's A/B testing techniques on their push notifications timing. So Duolingo noticed that users typically came back to their app at the same time every day, because typically you sit down for a lesson and you're sitting down at a time that works for you frequently. So what they did was personalize the timing of the push notification sent to your device and personalize the messaging that was on the notifications. And from this, Duolingo saw a 5% increase in daily active users. This shows that well-timed personalized notifications outperform generic reminders, driving retention and engagement. Another example that we see is Spotify's approach to optimization. And this is through a very heavily personalized experience on that app. Now, we're not expecting your app to be where Spotify is. I mean, Spotify is probably in the top 1% of app personalizations on the market. But it's always interesting to see what kind of approaches they're taking and seeing whether there's elements of it that you can adapt for your approach to app optimization. So they use AI-powered recommendations in order to promote artists to you, playlists that you've been listening to get you back into the flow. They also support personalized notifications and playlists. There's always a massive hype around December time when Spotify release their Unwrapped, which displays to you your most common listened artists throughout the year, what your favorite genres are, what podcasts you've been listening to, and then they have the feature that you can share that with your friends as well. They also have dynamic user interfaces and content, which doesn't just change on your preferences, it changes on examples of like what time of day it is, to provide you the most relevant content at that particular time.
Just a few other examples of problems that some companies and brands are using experimentation to solve. We have a dating app from Japan who wanted to drive an increase in subscriptions. And so, of course, just like with a website, you can test different variation of these paywalls using different messaging, value propositions, etc. And they were able to drive an 8% increase in subscription registrations by testing 4 different variants. A mobile media company in India rebuilt their app from the ground up, but rolled it out feature by feature in order to understand the impact of each feature. And so they tested even core functionality like the video player itself, which their experiment demonstrated increased watch time each month by 38% on average. You can use experimentation if you believe you have a problem with your user interface, which is impacting the success of your app. So here we have a online ticket agent who tested a different seat selection UI and saw a decrease in drop-off rates and more conversions. And then that same brand tested once someone had selected a seat, including a seat view information within that add to basket process. And that one change, they were able to demonstrate increased revenue per visit by 7%. Now, all of these brands that we've referenced in one way or another have been able to prove the impact or prove the benefits of the change that they've made relative to the problem they thought they needed to fix. And it's obviously a lot less trivial to do this within an app environment than on a website. The way that these brands, in some way or another, would be approaching this question of testing different features is by using something called server-side testing. And the high level is that in server-side testing, your app is responsible for showing or not showing a given feature to a user, and some other experimentation platform is responsible for telling your app who to show each feature to, and also for reporting on the impact. And so the way that these server-side experimentation platforms work is that you'd install their SDK, like their code kit, within your app, that you'd use something called feature flags to define each variant and enable them to be toggled on and off. Each time someone logged into your app would tell the experimentation platform, hey, I have this person here. Which feature should they see? And the experimentation platform would tell your app, hey, this specific person should see this specific feature. So the toggle would be on or off. And then as the person or the user interacts with your app and hopefully has some success events like a registration, a login, a transaction, a subscription renewal, the app would report those success events back to the experimentation platform using that same code that you'd installed. And then the platform calculates which variant is winning. And yeah, thank you very much for attending today, everyone.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Maddie, for taking us through today's presentation. As I mentioned in the chat earlier, today's session is recorded, so we'll send that round in a couple of days. If you have any questions now or tomorrow or the next couple of days, feel free to either drop it in the Zoom chat feature now, or feel free to send us an email, and we can always happy to go back and run through those questions and come back with as much detailed information as we can. So I appreciate everyone taking 40 minutes out of the day to join us for today's webinar. I appreciate in today's world, we're pretty time poor, meetings are back to back, so we super appreciate everyone joining us today. And hopefully, we'll get to see you on another session pretty soon. We'll be sharing a bunch of how-to articles and blog posts around today's topic, so more shareable, more digestible, more readable over the next couple of weeks. But in the meantime, just leaves me to say thank you very much and see you soon.